One thing that's going to be a big issue, of course, in Scotland, Glenn, is what we would call a stooshy between Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon. It goes back a long way, and it sounds quite complicated, but it is really, really important in terms of the unity going forward of the SNP itself.
Yeah, it might not be on the front pages today, but I think you'll hear a lot more about it over the next couple of weeks, perhaps. It's been suppressed by the focus on coronavirus, but there are inquiries looking into the Scottish Government's mishandling of harassment complaints against the former Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond, and they are now nearing the end. For background, Alex Salmond faced accusations of harassment and successfully challenged the process under which he was investigated by the Scottish Government in court and was awarded more than £500,000 in legal costs. He then faced a criminal trial and was acquitted of all the sexual offence charges he faced. So what started with complaints about his behaviour has now morphed into something of a parliamentary trial of his successor, Nicola Sturgeon. That she'll give a full account of her position in the Holyrood inquiry when she appears before it in the next couple of weeks. Remember, though, we're talking here about the two figures who've dominated Scottish politics in recent years, led the country very close to independence.
Let's talk about the Alex Salmond case. Your predecessor and former friend has said that your account of this is, and I quote, simply untrue, manifestly untrue, untenable. Parliament has been repeatedly misled. What did you think when you saw those words?
I don't accept that, and I will refute that vigorously. Look, questions have been raised about my handling of sexual harassment claims made about my predecessor. It's right that I am properly scrutinised on that. I had hoped that I would be before the committee conducting this inquiry on Tuesday this week. Unfortunately, that's been delayed by a couple of weeks. But I'll sit before that committee and I will refute all of those accusations, and I will set out my account of what happened, given the very difficult situation that I faced. And people can make their own judgments on that. But what I will never do is apologise for doing everything I could to make sure that claims, complaints about sexual harassment were investigated, that they weren't simply swept under the carpet because of the seniority and the powerful position of the person who was subject to them.
Your spokesman said that Mr Salmond is, and I quote, spinning false conspiracy theories. Do you agree with your spokesman?
Well, what I do certainly sometimes reflect on is that at times I appear to be simultaneously accused of colluding with Mr Salmond to somehow cover up accusations of sexual harassment on the one hand, and then on the other hand of being part of some dastardly conspiracy to bring him down. Neither of those things.
Sorry, do you agree with your own?
There are false conspiracy theories being spun about this. And what I would say is this: what is forgotten in all of that are the women who brought forward these complaints. Now, you know, at the time I became aware of all of this, just tried hard not to interfere with what was going on and not to do anything that would see these swept aside rather than properly investigating. The Scottish Government made mistakes in the investigation of that, and that's part of the subject of the inquiry. But I didn't collude with Alex Salmond, and I didn't conspire against him. When I get the opportunity, which I've been waiting a long time on now, to sit in front of this committee, then I can set out these things fully. It's right, as First Minister, I was faced with a difficult decision. Then I have give me a free pass. It's right that I'm properly scrutinised on that.
At the centre of all of this is the question about what you knew and when you knew it about the allegations against Mr Salmond.
Alex Salmond told me about the allegations against him on the 2nd of April in my house. Look, I am going to go into this with the committee with the greatest of respect, Andrew. I'm not going to get into the weeds of this with you in a short interview. I've set out some of this in my written evidence to the committee, and I'm going to set that out in oral evidence to the committee when I get the opportunity. I'm very happy to do that.
Your husband, who's the chief executive of the SNP, gave evidence to the inquiry last month, and he was asked about text messages to other SNP officials which talk about pressurising the police over this case.
There are no messages that are relevant to this committee's inquiry. The text messages that you referred to there were, as I understand it, the day after Alex Salmond was charged with serious offences. was no conspiracy. Complaints came forward here. They had to be investigated. It's right that there's scrutiny into how those of us confronted with this handled that. But that's what the Committee of Inquiry is for. And I will sit in front of that Committee of Inquiry and I will answer these questions in the appropriate way, and I'll show due respect to it.
If it is true, if it is proved to be true that you misled Parliament, you would resign, wouldn't you? You would have to resign.
Look, I did not mislead Parliament, so I'm not going to speculate on what might happen in the future. I'm clear I did not mislead Parliament. But I think, to be perfectly frank, Andrew, I think I've got a right to due process of inquiries as well before you start to take me beyond those inquiries to what might happen then. I'm clear that I did not mislead Parliament, and that's what I will set out clearly when I get the opportunity, which I haven't had in front of the Committee of Inquiry yet.